Ohio, laid off workers from Indiana, retirees from Honeywell in Indiana that have lost their benefits. All of this calling on President Trump to do more to save these jobs, to stop offshoring of American jobs. The GM jobs, the workers from Lordstown, Ohio, found out that they were being offshored on the day that President Trump was inaugurated. So we're here today calling on President Trump to stop offshoring, calling on him to make sure that companies that are getting huge federal contracts stop shipping our jobs overseas. And that's why we're here today. If you're watching on act.tv, give us a like, give us a comment. If you're watching on any other pages that are watching, thank you for watching. Drop us a comment, let us know where you're watching from. And so, again, we're here in Erie, Pennsylvania on the next stop of Good Jobs Nation Promises Broken Pickup Tour. And we're here with laid-off workers from Ohio, from Indiana, from a Carrier worker is with us from Indianapolis, Indiana. And we're going to talk to all of them, talk about the effect that offshoring has had on their jobs, on their lives, talk to them a little bit about what they're asking President Trump to do in order to make sure that good American jobs stay here in the United States, and especially those by federal contractors. Our first guest today is going to be Joseph Givargis. Joseph is the director of Good Jobs Nation. So Joseph, come on up.
Hey Paco, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you, man?
Good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Always fun to be at a Trump rally.
Absolutely. So, tell me a little bit about why we're here today in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Well, you know, the truth is that Donald Trump is back on the campaign trail once again. He's not on the ballot, but many GOP candidates are. And part of Donald Trump's stump speech is jobs are pouring back. Offshoring has stopped. The economy is booming. Wages are going up. In fact, he unveiled a new slogan: promises made, promises kept. What he's doing systematically over the course of the next month is coming to places like Erie and Wisconsin, northern Indiana, northeast Ohio, key places, right, that helped put him in the White House, in part because he campaigned as a worker champion. He promised the jobs were going to come back. Now he's saying they have come back, promises kept. Vote for the GOP. Well, the truth is we're here today because there are hundreds of thousands of laid-off workers who are with me or who are in the Midwest, some of whom are with me, who are the most direct rebuttal to President Trump's claims that the economy is booming, that he has stopped offshoring. In fact, we just did a research study at Good Jobs Nation. We found that instead of punishing corporate offshores like he promised, Donald Trump actually has given over $50 billion, that's billion with the B, $50 billion worth of taxpayer contracts to top corporate offshores like General Motors, like Honeywell, like United Technologies, the parent of Carrier. These workers are the testament to the fact that Donald Trump says one thing but then does another. Instead of being a working class hero, he's standing on the side of the capitalist class.
And so tell me a little bit, I mean, you know, this tour's been in Ohio, it's been in South Bend, Indiana, it's been to Wheeling, it's been to other places. What is the significance of some of these locations when we're talking now about electoral power? Well,
for example, you're going to hear from some of the workers who are with us. There are folks here from Trumbull County. Trumbull County is where General Motors is located. General Motors has laid off over 3,000 auto workers in Lordstown, in Trumbull County, since he took the oath of office. And why is that significant? Because Donald Trump won the White House. He won the White House because he flipped Trumbull County. Trumbull County has been a Union Democratic stronghold for decades. In fact, the last time it voted for a Republican was in 1972. 1972, right? And what happened is these folks, Donald Trump went to these distressed communities where a lot of factories were closing down, where jobs were disappearing, and the president said, I am going to bring back jobs. I'm going to put the American worker back to work. I've got a pantomime here. This is awesome. I always want somebody to imitate me. Thank you. You're really pretty good at this, too. So here's the thing. The reason this is really important is these workers are from pivot counties. They voted for Barack Obama twice, right? These counties they live in voted for Donald Trump twice. I mean, voted for Barack Obama twice, and then pivoted to Donald Trump. They are the key to whether Donald Trump will be back in the White House. They're the key to whether the GOP is going to continue to control Congress. And these workers are fighting plant closures in those communities. They are on the front lines of addressing, right, that which Donald Trump has failed to address. Donald Trump has failed to keep their plants open, and they're fighting back. And they're here as American citizens to petition their president to deliver on his promise. Donald Trump promised to deliver more jobs, better wages. He promised to stop corporate offshoring. He has yet to do so. We are here with our modern day Coxley's army of jobless men and women fighting for their health care, to call on the president to do what he says and deliver for the American worker, or otherwise just be honest. Just own that you are a capitalist and you're going to use the power of government to advance the interests of the corporate class.
All right, Joseph, thank you so much for giving us that overview. And I think now we're going to go to a video now that's a little bit of an intro into the pickup tour, and we'll be back in just a second.
Donald Trump promised to make a lot of phone calls to companies that were shipping jobs overseas. Well, I'm still waiting. I haven't seen it. I don't think any of us have.
He's doing anything but saving jobs in the United States.
This tour is pushing the point that we want good jobs and we want to protect the sovereignty of our country and the workers that create the wealth of this country.
Because what Good Jobs Nation has reminded us, we're not going to allow you to get away with outsourcing decent jobs in America. We're going to have an economy that works for workers. So our job, and you've heard me say this many times, is to think big, not small. And the wealthiest country in the history of the world. There is nothing that we cannot accomplish when we stand together and have the guts to end the greed of the government.
All right, so again, guys, we're here in Erie, Pennsylvania. We're here outside of Donald Trump's rally, and we're here with a simple message with a bunch of laid-off workers. The president should do all he can to make sure jobs stop leaving the U.S., that jobs stay here in America. And so I'm here, and I want to introduce somebody that you guys may remember. Maybe the folks watching on TV remember Carrier. This was a plant owned by United Technologies out in Indianapolis. And I'm here with Frank Staples. Frank is a really good friend of mine. We've met in Indianapolis a few times, and he's here in Erie because he also wants to talk a little bit about offshoring and the effect that has had on his community in Indianapolis. So, Frank, how you doing, man?
Doing all right, Paco. How you doing, bro?
I'm good, thanks. It's kind of hot out here, you know?
Oh, yeah.
The sun's blazing. But, Frank, tell me a little bit about what happened over at Carrier. You were working at Carrier when Donald Trump made a promise to save those jobs. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, Donald Trump come to Indianapolis, and he promised us that he saved all of our jobs there at Carrier. He told everybody that he saved them. He also ran on a campaign promise that he was going to say if he became president, Carrier wouldn't go anywhere. Us folks there at Carrier, we've seen a different story. You know, we lost over 500 good union-paying jobs just there in Indianapolis. We also lost jobs up in Huntington that made, you know, supplied us with parts. We lost 700 jobs there. So, you know, Trump come in and he said he saved 1,100 jobs. He didn't save that many.
And so tell me, you know, the layoff, what kind of effect did it have on you personally, right? It was a tough moment. It's tough for anybody that loses their job, but I think it's important to make it real for folks, right? Like, tell us exactly what you went through.
Well, I went through the process of losing my home and losing my cars, ended up in a divorce. You know, just devastated, turned back to the streets for a while to try to make money the way I knew how to make money. You know, did a lot of things that I'm not proud of, but, you know, when you're in dire needs and dire straits, you try to figure out what you can do to, you know, make ends meet, you know.
And so, you know, more broadly, what kind of effect is this going to have in Indianapolis, right? I mean, in some places, like towns that are just like one company towns, when a layoff happens, it's really devastating, right? But it can also have different effects, right? Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing now in Indianapolis.
Well, we're seeing a lot more crime going, you know, up through the roof just because, you know, people are trying to provide for their families. We're seeing a lot of devastation with families that are being homeless and families that are, you know, not able to provide, you know, an essential meal for their kids, you know. So, I mean, we're losing kids to foster parents and things like that when they could be with their real parents if they kept these good paying jobs in the community.
And so, Frank, tell me, why did you make the trek all the way from Indianapolis over to Erie? I mean, it was a good, what, 7-hour drive, right?
7-hour drive.
So why did you come all the way over here?
We came over here because we want to hold Donald Trump responsible. Stand up, sign the executive order, stop offshoring, keep American jobs in America. He talks about being a workers' champion. Prove it. You know, bring the jobs back. Quit giving companies 20% tax break to move their equipment across seas. Quit giving them, you know, incentives to leave, you know, give them incentives to come back, you know, stop it, tax it like you said you're going to tax it.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks for coming out. It's always a pleasure to see you, man.
Yep, thank you.
All right. So again, we're here outside of the Trump rally in Erie, Pennsylvania. We're here with a bunch of laid-off workers from GM in Lordstown, Ohio, some retirees that have lost their benefits from Honeywell in South Bend, Indiana. You just heard from Frank, who's a Carrier worker, former Carrier worker, who lost his job after Trump promised to save it. And so we're out here with one simple message for President Trump. He could, with a stroke of a pen, guarantee that good jobs aren't leaving the U.S. He promised to do it during the campaign. The first words we're going to hear out of his mouth during this rally are going to be how jobs are pouring back, how wages are going up. Well, these workers are a clear rebuttal to that message, and in a little bit I'm going to have our producers play a video of Frank and others from Carrier, just to remind everybody that there are thousands of carriers across the Midwest, thousands of carriers all over this country, and the president isn't matching his rhetoric with action. And so, again, we're out here in Erie. If you guys are watching, drop us a comment. If you want to support the workers, you can sign the petition that's pinned to the Good Jobs Nation live stream. If you're watching from act.tv, shout out to you guys. If you're watching from any of the other pages that are streaming, let us know what page you're watching from, and we'll make sure, or at least we'll try to give you guys a shout out on camera. So we're going to pan over to some of the crowd that's starting to dwindle a little bit. I think folks are going in, and we'll play the video in just a second.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming here. That's right, I did. I voted for Trump. I drove in the pouring rain to vote for Trump. I believed him when he came to Indianapolis and said, we're not going to let Carrier leave.
And then I thought Mike Pence, being from Indiana, would have our back. Well, Apparently that didn't happen. I was wrong. We were all wrong.
But I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm here today to support my brothers and sisters like Dwayne and Renee and hundreds of others that have lost their job due to corporate greed. We need Trump to sign an executive order to stop offshoring. Pick up your damn hands and to quit screwing the American people that work their asses off and put you in office. Thank you.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer.
When they made the announcement that they were closing Carrier, people started realizing Trump just lied his ass off about what he was actually doing, you know. It was a PR, it was a photo op for him saying, hey, look what I did, you know, and he really didn't do shit. Well, I think it's going to get bad again like it has been, you know. You have people that are working in these factories that are used to making, you know, the money to be able to support their family. And when they can't make that money no more, they have to turn to the streets or they have to turn to something, you know, doing something illegal in order to provide, you know. I mean, you can go get a job at McDonald's, but how are you going to feed a family of 4?
I worry about my kids or my grandkids. You know, one day all the jobs being gone, you know what I mean? And they have to move overseas or move to another country, you know what I mean? Rather than America and, you know, US of A where we live. Because there's no jobs.
Last day at work, very quiet, wasn't very active. It was a very depressing moment that night, the whole shift. This is all aviation and student maintenance. Tire expert, certified, Rolls-Royce, shit. India Work One is an organization, it's kind of like an unemployment office, but it's not. It's one of those 50-50s. But what we're going through with Carrier, they're helping us find employment, offering us training, education through colleges. So they've been a big part of helping former UTC Carrier employees. They've been great. It was a big family at Carrier. It was a real big family, so it's just like an ugly-ass divorce right now where you're getting separated, and it sucks.
Because, you know, he did go to airline mechanic school and everything, you know. I mean, he's got certifications on the wall. Like I told him, look around, you know, and you got a lot going on here. But he's in a dark place. And if he doesn't climb out of it, I'm worried about him. It isn't like I didn't know the day was coming. I just held out hope that, because there's been so many other times, you know, so many other instances come up where there was hope because he was going to do something. You know, he was going to step outside the box, and he was going to let them know this was not going to happen here. You're not going to take, you know, your companies and run and do it there and leave us behind. I mean, we all jumped on the Trump bandwagon. We all did. Everyone did. We all believed in everything he said. We wanted to believe. And now it's just like gone. And I'm like lost. I don't know what to do. You know what I mean?
The reality is, not long after that this deal was made with Carrier and UTC, our federal government signed a contract with UTC for several $1 billion in federal contracts. That, to me, is a negotiation tool. They should have used that to the ability to save every single job, and they did not.
I think he's just a jackass. I think he should have never been elected president, and I feel sorry that the American people elected his ass president.
They went about this so wrong. That's been my life, and I plan on working there until I retire.
I can't dwell on the past. What's happened. How I got fucked. My past members got fucked. The community just got fucked. I gotta look past that and just go from there and hope that the next company you're with is not going to do what UTC did.
Hopefully the executive order can get signed and he will put a stop to it, and will keep happening. Because there won't be much left. You know what I mean? This manufacturing is almost non-existent anymore.
Manufacturing disappearing as a whole in the United States, it's killing all the communities. It's not something that, you know, makes a lot of people have faith in the American, you know, dream anymore. Carrier gave me a thing to look forward to every day, go in and do a job and be proud of my job because I know that we put quality product out. So pandemic, right?
Actually,
Hey guys, so we're back here in Erie, Pennsylvania for the Trump rally. We're starting to get blown around a little bit. I think the hurricane winds are making it up here. So we're here again in Erie, Pennsylvania, outside of the Trump rally that's happening at the Erie Insurance Arena. We're here with laid off workers from GM in Ohio, retirees from Honeywell that have lost their benefits, and with a Carrier worker. I remember Carrier. We just heard from him earlier. We'll hear from him a little bit again in a little bit. But first, I want to introduce you guys to Rochelle and Tommy. Come on up, Rochelle and Tommy. So Rochelle and Tommy came all the way from Lordstown, Ohio. They worked at the GM plant over there making the Chevy Cruze. So I'm going to start with Rochelle. So Rochelle, tell me a little bit about how long you worked over at GM Lordstown.
I worked 2 years over at the Lordstown plant, and January 17th, the same day Trump got inaugurated, I got pink slipped and laid off from work indefinitely.
And so what have you been doing to make ends meet now that you've been sort of struggling with a layoff?
I work now as a server, making $4.15 an hour plus tips.
Wow, so you went from about $25 or so an hour?
About $20 an hour.
$20 an hour to $4.50, and you guys are really struggling, right? It's been tough. I know your partner Tommy, who's right next to you. Tommy, how long were you at the GM plant?
9 years.
And what was it like when you heard about the layoff?
Oh man, it was scary. I wanted to think that it was just, going to be a brief little thing, but, it's been a year and a half now.
Yeah. And so tell me a little bit, you went to a Trump rally. I mean, I remember you telling me you went to a Trump rally back in 2017, is that right? Tell me a little bit about that rally.
Okay, so yeah, I went to my first rally, and it was a Donald Trump rally. And I remember him saying, jobs are going to be rolling back in. Don't sell your houses. And everything he was saying, man, I was all for it. I liked what he was saying, and I became a Trump supporter at that time.
Right. And how are you feeling now, right? Your job has been offshored. It's happening all over the country, right? Not just in Ohio, but we've heard from folks in Indiana and other places. How are you feeling now? I mean, I know you went back to school, right?
Yeah, I went back to school. I ended up getting you want to hold her?
Hold on, we're switching props.
I ended up getting a diesel technician degree, and I ended up also getting my CDL, so I'm hoping that, I start working in the trucking industry soon. But jobs it just seems like it's really hard to get a job in our area, even with a degree. But President Trump, what he told me, I believed him, and, 18 months later, I'm still laid off from GM, and I really need his help to,
Right. So tell me a little bit about why you're here today, right? You guys drove from Lordstown. What message are you trying to deliver to President Trump?
I'm trying to get my voice heard. We're trying to get our voice heard to tell President Trump, we need your help. Our community is in shambles. I mean, there's 10 to 15,000 people affected right now by the layoffs in our area, and General Motors, we're hearing rumors that they're going to close down altogether, and if that happens, I mean, that's going to be devastating for our area.
Right. So Rochelle, tell me a little bit about, I know you guys are here together, but tell me why you decided to come today. I know you've been to, you were in Evansville, is that right? Indiana?
Wheeling,
West Virginia.
Yes.
So this is your second Trump rally, right?
Yes.
So what kind of message do you think the president needs to hear?
I think he needs to stop these big companies from offshoring jobs. There needs to be consequences for these companies for taking our work, our American workers, and taking our jobs overseas. These people in Mexico make like $3 an hour, and then they make all this profit off of it. It's corporate greed.
Right. All right. So Tommy and Rochelle, thank you very much. And Ella Grace, you want to say something really quick?
Annabella.
Say hi.
Annabella Grace.
Bye-bye.
You want to say something? No?
Say jobs in Ohio, jobs in America. Keep them here.
All right. I got to take it back now. Hold on one second. Thanks. All right. So we're going to hear now. We heard from Tommy and Rochelle. I want to introduce you to another Ohio worker who was laid off. Scott Chiddock. Come on up, Scott. How you doing, man?
Good, brother. How are you?
Good. So Scott has been on tour in some ways with Good Jobs Nation. He was in Evansville He was in Wheeling. Were you in Evansville?
No, I wasn't in Evansville, but every 1 cent, so it feels like 3, 4, 20. I don't know.
That's right. That's right. So you were in Wheeling, West Virginia, Rochester, Minnesota, and now Erie, right?
Yes.
And so tell me, Scott, I mean, what kind of effect do you think the layoff is going to have on the broader community in your hometown?
If General Motors goes out of business or keeps one shift, whatever you want to call it, which they say is not economical to them to keep open in one shift, basically, it would devastate our community. It's the biggest employer. It's the best paying jobs in Northeast Ohio in our area. And without it, our community most likely would fail. That's all I could say is fail. Mass exodus, fail, everybody leave. I don't know what else it could happen.
Right. So look, I mean, in our conversations, I remember you telling me a story of one of your kids telling you some news from school, right? So tell us a little bit about it. And I think this is really helpful because it makes it real for folks, right? Like conversations that we're having with our children, with our neighbors, with our parents. This kind of stuff makes it really real. So tell me a little bit about that conversation you had with your kid.
We're kind of like a family unit. I got a wife and 2 children. They're teenagers. Basically, we get up as a family unit. We get everybody off to school, off to work, everything. We do it every day. It's just something we do. We have a saying, we do what we got to do. And so that's how they get me to go to work. That's how I get them to go to school. But basically, my son came up to me the other morning. He said, "Dad, I'm really upset. Another one of my friends is leaving. He's had several of his friends have to transfer out of town already from the workers at GM Lordstown, the 3,000 layoffs, and cut to 2 shifts." And that's tough. When your kid, it's one thing to get laid off. I'm about 3 months into my layoff, and so I'm kind of experiencing things as they happen. It's still pretty raw, and sometimes I get caught up in that emotion. But when my son came to me and he said, "Dad, I don't understand why General Motors would ship jobs to Mexico and out of the country," and I don't have an answer. How do I answer that? Right. So that's why I'm here. I'm here to hold President Trump accountable. He said he would sign an executive order on day 1. 18 months roughly, I guess. I don't know, more than that. He ain't done it. Right. So I just want to hold President Trump accountable and say, please sign that executive order. If they want government contracts, if they want hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer money for free, basically our money, stay in America. Keep our jobs in America.
Right on. Yeah, so that's the message we're trying to deliver, right? And I want to also remind folks that are watching, maybe if they haven't seen some of our other live streams, you guys went inside Wheeling, West Virginia, right? Inside the Trump rally. Tell them a little bit about who you got a chance to meet up with.
Well, we basically got ushered all around Wheeling Arena by President Trump's security force, and they moved us here, moved us there. We could be here, we couldn't be there because they knew we have a message, and our message is, to hold President Trump accountable for that executive order, keep jobs in America. But President Trump's 2020 campaign manager, Brad Parscale, and his COO, Michael Glassner, for his 2020 campaign. This is part of his campaign. He's kicking it off early, whatever, for 2020. And they talked to us. They came up to us. They asked us some questions. We told them our story. They said, honestly, it's a big country. They can't keep up track of everything. But when I told them about 3,000 layoffs from General Motors, they were very interested. They asked us to email them some stuff, and so we did.
And have you heard back from them yet?
No.
Right.
Not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
So look, folks.
Except for when I see him in person.
Right. You've seen him twice now, right? You saw him last week in Rochester too.
Yes, very much.
Yeah, they had a freaked out look on their face a little bit.
I'm bird dogging them.
Yeah, right.
I'm their shadow.
That's right. So look, I mean, this is, I think, really important to mention, right? The message that these workers are bringing is counter to some of the top messaging the president is pushing out during the campaign at the White House. He's talking about jobs pouring back. He's talking about more jobs, better wages. He said he was going to be the biggest job creator in the history of job creators. But that hasn't happened yet, and these guys are proof of that, right? So, Scott, thank you so much for coming out. I really appreciate it, and we'll keep fighting with you guys.
Yeah, we're going to keep fighting until we get an answer and keep jobs in America, get that executive order, keep jobs in America, and hold everybody accountable.
That's right. Thanks, Scott.
Yes, sir.
All right, so you heard from Scott, you heard from Tommy and Rochelle, you've heard from several other workers. We're here outside the Erie, Pennsylvania, Erie Insurance Arena is what it's technically called, for a Trump rally. It's going to start in a few hours, and we're out here with workers that have been offshore. They've been laid off by huge federal contractors. And I want you guys to watch this video that we're going to put up really soon. It's an episode that Good Jobs Nation put together. It's called We the Forgotten. And it's about Tommy's in it, Rochelle is in it, and you'll hear, I think, a really interesting message there from workers, not just from them, but from others that are fighting to make sure good jobs stay here in America, that good jobs don't leave, and that we especially hold federal contractors accountable. If they're getting our taxpayer dollars, they shouldn't be shipping jobs overseas. We'll be back live in just a second.
How long we got?
Forgotten men and women of the United States are forgotten no more.
I won't be duped again. You know what I mean? I won't fall for that. Their rhetoric and campaign promises that none of them follow through with. To me, this was the ultimate, you know, in your face, because it directly affected me.
We were hoping that the policies he was going to put in place could help stop the flow of jobs outward, and maybe it would do something to keep my job and keep the factory open.
I want to take care of the American workers. I want to be America first, okay?
So that was a big plus on why I voted for Mr. Trump.
You know what? If anybody can get us back to work, you know, President Trump, you know, he should be able to do it. And like I said, it's been first time in 10 years that I don't have any type of income coming in, you know, with General Motors, and I'm scared now. After hearing the things that, you know, he said to us and some of the promises that he made, you know, I was all in. I was like, all right, I'm a Trump supporter.
Where is President Trump bringing back jobs? Where? What jobs? What jobs is he bringing back specifically? I don't see it.
The message I would like to say to Mr. Trump today is that based on your campaign promises, you got my vote. And based on what you've done for me, you won't get another. We're waiting for you. We were hoping you would do something to keep our jobs in America, and you have not.
You're the great people. You're the great people. You work hard, you pay your taxes, you do all these things, and you were forgotten. They forgot about you.
I feel really bad because I hate to even mention it, because I helped put him there. I helped put President Trump in office. You know, along with many others. You know what I mean?
Hey guys, so we're back here in Erie, Pennsylvania. I'm Paco with Good Jobs Nation, and we're outside Trump's rally with an easy and simple message to understand that we're trying to deliver to President Trump. If companies are getting taxpayer dollars, they shouldn't be shipping jobs overseas. We're here with GM workers, Honeywell workers and retirees, and others. Carrier workers, you guys remember Carrier, right? Frank certainly does. We heard from him earlier, and we'll hear from him again in a little bit. But I want to tell you guys a little bit about why Good Jobs Nation has been engaged in this tour, right? We kicked it off at the very, very end of August, and so I'm going to bring up Joseph Givargis. He's the campaign director for Good Jobs Nation. Joseph, how you doing, man?
Good. Good to see you again, Paco.
Absolutely. I haven't seen you in a while. So, Joseph, tell me a little bit about why Good Jobs Nation is doing this Promises Broken pickup tour that, you know, kicked off in the Midwest.
Well, Donald Trump won the White House by promising to be a worker champion. He promised more jobs, better wages. He promised to punish corporate offshores. And 2 years into his presidency, he's out campaigning again, not for himself, but for congressional candidates, saying the GOP has kept its promises to the American worker. In fact, Trump has rolled out a new slogan: promises made, promises kept. And the purpose of our tour is to really highlight how Donald Trump is a false populist. He is saying one thing, but the living reality on the ground is really different. Instead of jobs coming back, we still have jobs going abroad. Instead of higher wages, we have workers who've lost their good GM jobs that were making 20 bucks an hour, 20 plus bucks an hour with health care, and now they're working at Cracker Barrel for $4 an hour. That's why we're here, right? We're here with retirees, right, who gave all they had. They worked for 30, 40 years at places like Honeywell, right, helping build equipment that helped America win wars. and the thank you for their service they get under Trump is Honeywell, major defense contractor, cuts their health care. The bottom line, it's important to have an authentic counter voice to what Trump is saying directly to his working class base. I'm delivering for you, and that's what we're trying to do, is provide the direct counterpoint. We've done research, right? And, our research report, which was written by Dr. George Faraday, who's our legal and policy director, shows that offshoring is skyrocketing under Donald Trump. Even though he's saying one thing, the research shows offshoring is skyrocketing. But put aside the research. You cannot ignore the living reality of a GM worker who lost their job, of a Honeywell worker who has lost their health care, or a Carrier worker that's still hoping that Carrier will bring, their jobs will come back. That's what we're trying to do, is hold Trump accountable. He can fix this with a simple stroke of the pen.
And so what's next, right? What's coming after Erie? You guys have been going from Labor Day to, I hope, Election Day?
Yes, we are going from Labor Day until Election Day. You just took my line, dude. So, but look, Trump's going to be on the road more and more in places like Erie, Pennsylvania. I had a friend who just sent me a message on Facebook. It's like, hey, when you come to Chicago? And I was like, unfortunately, not anytime soon, because Trump doesn't go to Chicago. He comes to Erie, Pennsylvania, hard-hit industrial towns, right, where he continues to claim he's a worker champion. And that's why we're here. We're going to continue to go where Trump goes. We're going to continue to build our movement of laid-off workers to bird dog the president until he keeps his promises. We've joked about historical references to what we're doing. We've got to pick up.
For folks out there, you're about to get a history lesson. Bear with us. It's going to be good, though.
So we've got a pickup truck that we're driving around the Midwest. You've probably seen on our website. It's our Promises Broken pickup truck. We're calling on Donald Trump to pick up his pen, sign an executive order, no federal tax dollars or contracts for companies that screw the American worker. Just sign it. If you're a worker champion, very easy. We're driving around the Midwest, organizing rallies, going to Trump rallies. But, I was talking to folks and we're like, what is the historical precedent for what we did? Well, one thing that we realized is it's very similar to Coxey's army. There was a jobless army after the recession or the Great Panic of 1893, and an army of laid-off, unemployed workers marched on Washington to demand good jobs from their government and from their president. And in many ways, that was the precursor of what became the New Deal. Even though Coxey's army didn't win then, they did ultimately prevail, and they did get the government to stand on the side of workers, and that's why we're here. This guy is saying he's standing on the side of worker. It's full of shit. These workers are proof positive. They prove that, and that's what we need to get out.
Right on. Thanks, Joseph. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, again, we're out here. You just heard from Joseph Givargis, the executive director of Good Jobs Nation. We're out here in Erie, Pennsylvania, outside a Trump rally. We're here with laid-off workers from GM in Lordstown, Ohio, Honeywell workers and retirees from South Bend, Indiana, a Carrier worker that you heard from earlier who's out here saying, hey, Trump promised to save our jobs, but I got laid off. So did a bunch of other workers all over the country. So that's why we're out here, and I want you to now hear from some of the Honeywell retirees. I'm going to bring up Larry Alexander. Oh, Larry, you're right there. I know it's hot. Should take that jacket off, man. So Larry's here. He came all the way from South Bend. So Larry, what kind of a drive did you guys have to do from South Bend? That's kind of far.
Oh, it was long, about 5.5, 6 hours, but it was well worth it. To get our message out, it was well worth it.
Right. So, Larry, tell me, what's been going on at Honeywell, right? You worked there. Tell me a little bit about how long you worked there and what you guys are fighting for now.
Okay, I was employed at Honeywell for 37 years, and all the time, my brothers and sisters, consisting of 4,700 retirees, we were promised lifetime health care for ourselves and our spouses. And lo and behold, after we retire, they throw us out in the cold. And we were promised for life that we would have these coverage. And because we're not generating revenue, we're not making money for them, so they dumped us.
Right, and I mean, Honeywell is a company that under the Trump administration, almost 2 years that the Trump administration has been in power, has gotten about $10 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars, from the federal government, right?
Yes.
How does that make you feel as a taxpayer?
It makes me feel mad because when he was running for office, he said he would bring jobs back to this country and that he would punish corporations for taking jobs out of this country, especially military that the taxpayers paying, and they're sending them to places like China and Turkey. And on top of that, Mr. Trump said that he signed $10 billion worth of federal contracts to Honeywell. So how do we be retreated for it? It's because they turn around and they take it offshore. And nobody tells you that the 160,000 jobs that are lost went offshore from federal contracts, that money belonged here in the United States. Thank you.
Right. So, Larry, you've been on tour a little bit with Good Jobs Nation now too. I saw you in Rochester. You're here in Erie. You were in were you in Wheeling, West Virginia?
That one.
You were in Evansville, right?
I was in Evansville. I missed all. I was there for all but one.
Right. So, tell me, what kind of message are we trying to deliver here to President Trump?
We're just trying to tell President Trump, look, you made promises, and your theme now is promises kept. You haven't kept your promises to us retirees. Letting Honeywell get away with what they're doing, letting them not hold them accountable for taking the jobs offshore like you promised, and it's not good to taxpayers, and it's not good for this country.
All right, Larry, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming out with us. Again, we just heard from Larry Alexander. He's a Honeywell retiree, worked at Honeywell for 37 years. 37 years. And, a company just cut his benefits, even though they had promised lifetime health care for their workers even after they retired. And so, again, we're out here in Erie, Pennsylvania, outside of a Trump rally. We're calling on President Trump to guarantee that companies that are getting taxpayer dollars keep jobs here in America, pay living wages, and fulfill their promises to for retirees like Larry, right? They said they were going to keep paying for their health care even after they're retired. After a couple of years, they shut that off, and that's just not right. Workers retired expecting that. They planned their savings expecting to have that health care, and now in some cases they're having to pay $1,200 a month out of pocket for health care that wasn't in their budget, that wasn't in their retirement plan, and some of them are really suffering. So I want to talk now with Cherie. Cherie is another Honeywell retiree. This is the first time she's joining us, first time she's doing something with Good Jobs Nation, so we're super happy to have you here, Cherie. So Cherie, tell me, what happened to you in particular, right? What was the big issue that you're here today to highlight?
My health care. They took health care benefits from 4,700 retirees and families and offshoring the jobs. That's basically why I'm here. They want to take our jobs to Turkey, and we do military contracts, and I think President Trump needs to stop this.
Right. And so tell me, when your health care was cut, how did you end up, making it work, if you will?
Well, we were promised lifetime benefits, but we had to go out and buy our own insurance, and it's basically almost unaffordable. We're barely making it. We've used all our savings, everything. They've just drained us, and we were promised that. We made the company what it is today, and we were promised that.
Right, and I mean the other problem, right, is Honeywell's a huge federal contractor. The majority, I don't want to give percentages, but certainly the majority of their business comes from the federal government, right? That's our taxpayer dollars, right? The government has leverage over a company like Honeywell to make sure it's doing the right thing. You pay taxes, right? So how does that make you feel as a taxpayer that the company's treating you that way?
Bad, really bad. We made the company what it is, and really bad. It's our livelihood, and we have 90, 100-year-old, they're full of cancer. They don't have anyone to help them with their benefits. They're just lost. It's sad.
Right, and a lot of Honeywell workers, just so folks on the live stream know, worked in with asbestos a lot, right? They worked on building brake systems and other things that have asbestos and other chemicals that aren't necessarily good, and a lot of them are now suffering with chronic health problems, right?
We've lost a lot of our members.
And so, I mean, that's just not right. A company that these workers made profitable, that these workers made rich in many ways, on top of the taxpayers, shouldn't be treating its workers that way. Cherie, thank you so much. Thanks for coming out, and we're really glad you're with us today.
Thank you.
All right, guys, so you heard from Cherie, you heard from some other Honeywell retirees. We're out here at a Trump rally in Erie, Pennsylvania. We're here because Trump promised more jobs, better wages. The first words you're going to hear him speak at these rallies is how the economy's doing great, how he's the best job creator ever, how jobs are pouring back into the country. But the workers that are around me are a clear rebuttal to that, right? These are folks that work for huge federal contractors. GM gets something like $900 million in federal contracts every year. We have Honeywell that got $10 billion from the Trump administration over the last 2 years, and they're cutting benefits, they're offshoring jobs, and that's just not right. President Trump promised to end this. He hasn't, and for us, this is one of the sharpest critiques that the president, right, is that even for folks in Ohio and Youngstown, Ohio, and South Bend, Indiana, and other places, those promises are just not coming through. I want to speak now with one of the other Honeywell retirees, Nancy. Come on up, Nancy. I'll hold that for you if you want. So Nancy, how you doing today?
Pretty good so far.
Good. What do you think? I mean, it's a pretty nice day. It's a little hot, right?
Yeah, but it's worth it.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Really worth it, yeah.
So Nancy, this is the first time you've done anything with us, and we really appreciate you coming out. Tell me a little bit about what happened to retirees like you at Honeywell at South Bend.
Well, the main thing is everyone tells you, plan for your retirement. It's so important. I did that 11 years ago when I retired. Well, 11 years later, last year, Honeywell was charging me $1,200 a month for insurance for my husband and I, and he's on Medicare. Right. They tried to get me for $2,400 a month this year, but luckily I turned 65.
Right. So, I mean, and the company had promised all the retirees, right? Lifetime benefit.
Lifetime insurance, yes.
Right. And so, I mean, how does that make you feel, right? You're a taxpayer. Honeywell has gotten rich off both your labor and your taxpayer dollars, right?
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Not good at all. It's been a hard fight trying to find different insurances, figuring everything out, and I had to quit taking one med because I can't afford it every month.
Right. And so, I mean, that's tough, right? You're going to have to make tough decisions whether or not you can buy the medication you need to be healthy, or whether you put food on the table, for example. So what's the message you want to deliver out here today?
Just for Trump to keep his promises and help us get our insurance back and not ship 20 jobs over to Turkey for a military contract for fighter jets, because that's a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah, it's a national security issue, right? Like this is vital equipment that our military troops rely on in order to make it back safe from their mission.
We have to go through, and we have to go the checkout line through the airport, and then they're going to be making things overseas now.
Right. Yeah, it's a problem. So, hey, Nancy, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming out here. Good Jobs Nation is supporting you and all the other retirees, and we're really happy you made it out here today. Thank you.
Stick together.
That's right. That's right. I think it's important to mention now that like Larry and Cherie and Nancy and others, they're from UAW Local 9 in South Bend, Indiana, and UAW Local 9 is actually a historic local in the history of labor. UAW Local 9, many people don't know this. Everybody thinks it's that Flint, Michigan held the first sit-down strikes back in the 1930s that ended up creating what is now the United Auto Workers, the UAW. But it was actually South Bend, Indiana, and Bendix Corporation, which Honeywell purchased, that held the first sit-down strikes in America, kicked off a movement that ended up creating what we know now as the UAW. And so that happened in South Bend, Indiana, back in the 30s. Flint gets all the credit, and they should. They had some of the bigger ones, but UAW Local 9 in South Bend was the first sit-down strike that was held, I think, a few months before Flint, Michigan was. So again, we're out here in Erie, Pennsylvania. We're here outside of a Trump rally, part of the Good Jobs Nation Promises Broken pickup tour. And we're here with laid-off workers from GM, laid-off workers from Honeywell and Carrier and others, who are calling on President Trump to keep his promises. He promised more jobs, better wages. He promised to bring jobs back. But these workers are seeing their jobs leaving to places like Mexico, Turkey, and other places, which is just not right. So these workers are out here. They're trying to deliver a message to President Trump. Companies that are getting our taxpayer dollars in federal contracts shouldn't be shipping jobs overseas. And that's what we're trying to do out here today. I think we have one more video for you guys to watch, and Phil, now our camera guy, is going to pan a little bit to show some of the crowd.
Hundreds of protesters greeted the president and his supporters at the rally in Evansville. One group called Good Jobs Nation wanted to send a message to the president asking what the president has done to keep jobs in the U.S.
We're here at the Trump Free Labor Day rally in Evansville, Indiana, and we're with workers calling on Trump to keep our jobs in the United States of America.
It's an American message. Everyone has a job. Everyone wants a quality job. Everyone wants their job to stay in America.
There's no accountability.
And I believe everyone wants President Trump to keep that quality job here in America.
The message I would like to say to Mr. Trump today is that based on your campaign promises, you got my vote. And based on what you've done for me, you won't get another. We're waiting for you. We were hoping you would do something to keep our jobs in America, and you have not.
So if Mr. President wants to make this country good again, to make it good, bring these jobs back to the United States, and to keep it good, keep these jobs from going out of the country. Thank you.
Hey guys, so we're out here in Erie, Pennsylvania, outside of Trump's rally. It's going to kick off in a few hours, and we're here with laid-off workers from General Motors, GM, in Lordstown, Ohio. They lost their jobs the day that President Trump was inaugurated, and others have lost their jobs since. We're also here with Honeywell workers from South Bend, Indiana. These workers are fighting layoffs. Honeywell, which is a huge federal contractor, the majority of its business is with the federal government, is shipping jobs to Turkey. They make brake parts and other equipment for F-35 fighters, so that seems like a national security issue to me, but what do I know? I don't work on those issues. And then we're also here with Carrier workers, right? These are the workers that Trump, the first thing he did after he was president-elect was go to Indianapolis, Indiana, and promise that Carrier jobs were not going to be leaving the U.S. A year later, those jobs were shipped overseas. So I'm going to bring back Frank. I'm going to bring Frank back. He's going to be our last interview for the day, and then we'll play a few videos and we'll call it a day. So Frank is the Carrier worker that I mentioned earlier. He spoke earlier on the live stream. We're going to do it one more time. So Frank is my good buddy. We've known each other for a few years now, and I remember meeting him at Sully's Tavern. Sully's is the bar that's right outside the Carrier plant in Indianapolis. We had a chat, and he told me his story, and it was really powerful. So Frank, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, Paco.
Good. I'm glad you're back. So tell me a little bit. You were working at Carrier when President Trump promised that he was going to shave your jobs. What was that like?
We all got excited. Everybody was excited. He come in. He said he saved 1,000 jobs. And at that point, we only stood to lose maybe 150, employees, and maybe be able to bring them back someday. But it all turned out we lost over 500 jobs.
Right, and so how did that make the workers feel, right? They'd heard the president make a promise. They were expecting him to deliver. How did folks feel at the plant once, those jobs started leaving?
Well, morale went down real big. People started realizing that Trump lied, The biggest thing that the Carrier workers focused on was the fact that when Trump was running, just even in his campaign, before he became president, he said, if I become president of the United States, Carrier go nowhere. It went somewhere,
And so tell me a little bit about the personal effect that layoff had on you. I know you and I have talked. You talked about it earlier in the live stream, but for some of the folks that weren't watching when we were on camera earlier, tell me a little bit about the effect that layoff had on you personally.
Well, personally, ended up losing my home, losing my vehicles. Ended up getting a divorce just because there was so much stress on everything that was going on.
Right.
You know, it really brings your morale down. You know, you hear one thing, president saying he's going to, you know, save these jobs, and you're thinking everybody's safe, and so we got something to look forward, and we could build, you know, the American dream. But you know, that didn't happen.
Right. And so you drove all the way from Indianapolis over here. I mean, that's a really long drive, right? Like what, 8 hours or something it took you?
Yeah, about 8 hours it took us to get here last night.
So tell me why you decided to come here to this rally. What's the message you're trying to deliver?
Well, the message is for Trump to pick up the pen, sign the executive order, stop offshoring them good American jobs, and help the communities. He said he wants to make America great again. Bring the jobs back. You know, quit giving these companies, you know, subsidies and everything else to leave and reasons to leave. You know, when they have a tax break, you know, to move their equipment and to move their, you know, product and everything overseas, and we pay for it. You know, we get double screwed.
Right.
You know, we lose our jobs, and then they take our tax money and they you know, ship our companies over there. So, you know.
All right, Frank. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming out here. That's a lot of sacrifice, and it's always a pleasure to see you. And, you know, we're fighting shoulder to shoulder with you guys. So,
yes, sir.
All right. Thanks, Frank. Again, we're out here in Erie, Pennsylvania, outside of President Trump's rally. It'll kick off in a few hours. We're here with laid-off workers. If you guys are watching on the Facebook stream, drop us a comment. You know, tell us where you're watching from. We'll try to give you a shout out here on camera in a little bit. To all our live stream partners, act.tv and others, thank you very much for sharing the live stream, for helping us move this out. This message is really important. These workers who have lost their jobs are the direct rebuttal to the words we will hear from President Trump at his rally later today. Words like, you know, I'm the greatest jobs president ever. Jobs are pouring back into the country. It's hard for me to keep a straight face when I'm saying this. You know, that wages are going up, more jobs, better wages. Those promises he made in the campaign, he's breaking them, right? His line at these rallies is promises made, promises kept. But we have a line for the president too, and that's promises made, promises broken. What do you think, guys? Promises made?
Promises broken.
Promises made?
Promises broken.
Promises made?
Promises broken.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Give us a like. Give us a shout out. And we'll see you at the next Trump stop, which will be coming up in the next week or so. Thanks.
I hear you. We're going to do a quick Facebook Live if we can get all you guys in the background with your signs.
Sure. What page is it for?
It's for we're a television station, a collegiate station in Pittsburgh.
All right.
We spoke to Frank and I believe Mike last night.
Yeah, I saw you. Okay, cool.